What is up guys, my name is the Eagle Soars, you're watching a Battlefield 3 post-gameplay commentary. My bread and butter when it comes to this channel, I always say this every time I make one of these kinds of videos, and then proceed not to make one for about a month. But I still consider this to be vaguely my bread and butter, so that must count for something, surely. I know in the past, back in my early days of YouTube, when I did post commentaries like this, it was more kind of, an esports style play-by-play mindset breakdown type thing. I'm going to be bringing back that kind of video. What I'm planning on doing, because this game is becoming unbelievably stale for me, both to commentate over and to play, now that I'm a level 100 and have everything that's even remotely relevant unlocked, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from scratch, and I'm going to do a starting from scratch series. So the way this is going to work is, I'm going to reset my stats. And I know a lot of people who play with me on a regular basis are probably going to be very hostile to that idea. I don't care even in the slightest. You're just going to have to deal with it. I'm going to reset my stats, and I'm going to... actually, no, I'm not going to reset my stats on this account. I'm going to reset my stats on my second account. And then on my second account, every single game I play will be live commentated over using a new gun until I've used every gun in the game. And I will talk about the gun, and I will talk about my mindset, and I will talk about playstyle when using the gun, blah blah blah, this, that and the other. You don't really care until you see the video, so I'm going to move on. What I can tell you is that this may or may not cross over into live streaming as well. I said a while ago that I wanted to get back into live streaming, back on my Twitch channel. That's probably not going to happen on the current gen. The reasoning behind it is that I'm still running with a fairly old now at this point in time Hauppauge HD PVR, which is less than ideal for live streaming, for the simple reason that you can't live stream directly from the capture device. You have to sort of get up the capture module and then screen capture the capture module, and the end result of all this is that the quality is slightly degraded on everyone else's when it comes to console-based live streams. That should be solved on the next gen. Obviously, PlayStation now, I will be getting a PlayStation 4. I'll be talking about that in a few moments' time. It's one of the topics I want to cover. But the PlayStation 4 will have Twitch integration, so I will start streaming again if all goes to plan and I have the time to do so when the next generation of consoles comes out. But until then, I'm trying to work out my quality issues, but if I can't work them out, I'm not going to produce subpar quality content on my stream channel just for the sake of producing stream content, if that makes sense. Moving on from that, obviously, this kind of series is something that would translate very well to live streams. That's why I'm covering it. I just want to clear it up before somebody asks the question. Let's move on to the first topic. Now, as you will be aware, because you have these magical things on your wrists called watches, and a magical calendar in the bottom right-hand side of most of your computers, or at the top of your mobile phone or other mobile device that you're using to watch this, you'll know that it's the 4th of September when this video has come out. Very long-winded way of saying that, I know, I don't care, I'm not going to do this commentary over. 4th of September is today, as I said, and today was the day that Microsoft finally announced their flipping release plans for the Xbox One. Now, if you remember back at Gamescom in mid-August, you'll know that everyone expected Microsoft to come out with a release date then at their conference, but they didn't, and that could have been read in one of two ways at that point in time. First one, the incorrect way, I should add, is that they implied that, especially considering about a week before they announced that in 8 of their 21 launch markets, they announced that 8 of their 21 launch markets weren't going to be launch markets at all, and that the console was only coming to 13 launch markets, and those 8 previously announced launch markets will have to wait until 2014, including places in mainland Europe like the Netherlands and Belgium and so on. I know I have a certain degree of a following from those kinds of countries. I'm sure you're extremely disappointed that your overly priced console won't be coming out just as soon as you'd hoped. But with that, and with the lack of a release date announcement, everyone suddenly, the thought creeped into a lot of people's minds, including myself, that what with all of Microsoft's U-turns and the complete overhaul of their system, that they'd kind of been rushing the console a bit and they couldn't release it as planned. That has turned out to be effectively the case. The reason why the console is delayed is because they haven't had enough time to properly develop the voice control features of Kinect. Yet another disadvantage for bundling that in with every system. Again, I'll go into that in a moment's time. What they have announced, though, is that the Xbox One will release smack bang in the middle of the North American and European release dates of the PlayStation 4 on the 22nd of November, on the exact 8th anniversary of the release date of the Xbox 360. Ooh, what a coincidence. How exciting is that? Not really, if you ask me. The point of that is that we finally have release dates for both consoles, and they're only a week apart. So it's a much more even console battle this year than it was the previous year. Fantastic. The other thing that Microsoft executives have been going on about as of recent is how they're justifying, their justification for their console's $100/€100/£80 higher price tag. And their justification seems flimsy to me. So let's go through what they've said, and you tell me whether you think this justifies the price tag or not. So 3 main reasons are being bandied about by the Microsoft executives as to why the console quite rightly has a price tag so much higher than its competitor. Number 1 is Kinect. This is the last kind of remaining policy that Microsoft has that is anti-consumer in my view and should have been gotten rid of. Microsoft haven't quite seemed to work out the number 1 rule of innovation, that you can't force it on your consumers. It's something that comes about out of consumer choice. It's a magical thing in the economy, choice. That is where innovation comes from. You can't force innovation on your consumer. And I know a lot of people are fully aware of this, and yet Microsoft's star product development team hasn't been able to work this out. And Kinect, I know a lot of people will argue, especially Microsoft fanboys admittedly, that without bundling Kinect with every console, developers won't support the hardware as well as they would have done if it had the install base. My argument to that is that really, I don't see developers supporting Kinect unless the consumers support Kinect. It's kind of a catch-22 really. If the consumers don't see the value of Kinect, then in turn developers aren't going to see the value of developing for Kinect, and in turn the consumers are not going to see any value in Kinect because there's nothing that makes a worthwhile use of the hardware. Voice control, perhaps you can argue is one thing, but that's something that can be integrated into any old microphone. You don't need an £80/$100/€100 camera / motion sensing piece of hardware to do that. So what feature that provides, I don't know. I still think it's a bad choice on Microsoft's part to include it with every console. They should be thinking about making their console as competitive as possible, especially considering their catastrophic early launch of the console. I thought this was hilarious, by the way. Microsoft's marketing gurus. What's wrong with you guys? It's your work seems to be completely bipolar in its quality. Microsoft's marketing gurus seem to sort of swing. Their work seems to swing from making something as sort of completely meaningless as the cloud. At this point in time, at least, meaningless, but perhaps not in the future. Again, go into that in a second. But they've gone from turning the cloud into a genuine, unique selling point for the console, which is bizarre, because if you know anything about the cloud, you'll know that really they haven't really done anything spectacular. All they've done is subsidize dedicated servers for Xbox developers. Nothing more, nothing less. In summary, I know people like to sort of throw around that 300,000 server figure. That's nothing to do with the cloud. That's to do with the Xbox Live infrastructure itself. So, I love how, and then on the other hand, with Sony's, Microsoft's marketing gurus, as I call them, the other side of this is their contradictory, confusing statements in response to a lot of questions, the latest of which has been, do all Xbox One pre-orders come with FIFA included free in Europe? I think I saw that question being asked to 5 Microsoft executives, of which 2 said yes, 2 said no, and 1 effectively said maybe so. And, that kind of contradictory customer service is quite hilarious to watch, because it's just so tragic for a company of Microsoft's stature to be so contradictory, especially when Sony are doing such a good job from their end. You know, Microsoft seem to be doing a very good job in that every time they make a change to their console, they tell everyone who's working on the console, oh hey, we've made this change now. Just so you know. Microsoft don't seem to be doing this just quite so well. So if you ask a question to either Mark Cerny, the lead system architect, or another Sony executive, they will all give you the same answer because they seem to know very well what's going on with the console. And that's a sign of sheer enthusiasm for the project. I don't know why I said it in that slightly twisted way, but that's what it shows me as a onlooker in this kind of situation. And it's just very, very strange the way Microsoft, the way Microsoft has ended up, presenting itself as a company regarding the Xbox One. It's just, it's completely bonkers in my view. You know, the cloud is the second thing that Microsoft executives are trying to make out as something that justifies the higher price tag. It doesn't. And not just because the cloud is effectively just dedicated servers that have been subsidized for developers. Also because Sony are effectively doing the same thing. Now, I'm not talking about Gaikai here. I'm well aware that Gaikai is a completely separate service to the so-called cloud that Microsoft keeps referring to. It's a very, very different service. That's a cloud-based streaming service for games. Microsoft, it's literally dedicated servers for developers with subsidized prices. However, Sony have recently partnered with a company called Rackspace. These are a cloud computing solutions provider that have worked with companies like NASA in the past, providing, I think, cloud computing solutions that work in space are probably better than whatever Microsoft has to offer. That's just my opinion. And basically Sony has partnered with this company to help them set up their own equivalent cloud-based system that will more or less offer the same sort of things as Microsoft have done. Microsoft will keep referring to the cloud, but all it is they've built in the capability in their consoles to offload CPU processes to the cloud, which is something that Sony has as well, and it's been confirmed numerous times by the lead systems architect. And they subsidize dedicated servers for developers off of Microsoft's sort of hosting scheme that they have on the side that's sort of unrelated to the Xbox division of the company, but we're still under the kind of Microsoft roof, as it were. Really, cloud gaming then, not something that provides a lot of additional value with the Xbox One. Not only is it not a particular grand scheme, despite the bigging up of it by certain developers. Yes, I'm looking at you, Respawn, the developers of Titanfall, who, bigged up the whole cloud thing. They kind of overhyped it, in my view. But, developers are making a big deal about that. I don't see it as such a big deal. So, not something that provides a value, in my view. The other thing that Microsoft executives have been going on and on and on about is how their games are somehow better than anything that Microsoft has to offer. Sony has to offer. I don't really see where their justification comes from that. Do they have Metacritic scores to back up these claims? No, they don't, because the games aren't even out yet. So it's not a very good statement for an executive to be making. Oh yes, our games are better. On what basis? Just because you think so? Yeah, you wouldn't you? Because, it's your system that you're developing, that your job depends on. Don't buy that. Don't buy the executive statements about that. Not only has Microsoft not particularly outdone Sony in terms of their exclusives, but Sony's projects from the three first-party studios for Sony that I would argue are their biggest and most talented, Naughty Dog, Santa Monica, and Media Molecule, all three of those development studios have projects for the PlayStation 4, all of which are unannounced. Now, if we see an announcement of those projects at Tokyo Game Show, which seems fairly likely considering Sony have done a lot of games announcements, as in project announcements at TGS in the past, so we could well see the same sort of thing happening again this year. That's mid-September for those of you who don't know and are interested. And if we see that, there's no way Microsoft can then begin to argue that their lineup of games is bigger and better than that of Sony. There's just no way. Naughty Dog, Media Molecule, and Santa Monica, they make games that are pretty difficult to argue against in terms of their quality. So I don't buy that either. So to summarise, I'm getting a PlayStation 4 because I'm a PlayStation user at heart. I've got a Vita. I'm one of the only people in the world that seems to own one of these things. I haven't yet met anyone that has one apart from me. As disappointing as that is, I love the thing, and the PlayStation 4 is going to make great use of it. So that's one selling point. The other selling point is that a lot of the games I will buy on the current gen, like Battlefield 4, which I will buy on the current gen thanks to Sony's discounted upgrade scheme, you know, I can only transfer my stats to the next console in line. I can't transfer across platform, but I can transfer from PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4. So I'm buying the PlayStation 4 for those reasons, and I'm buying the PlayStation 4 because of its superior hardware. It's not because of price, but if you do buy your consoles on price, PlayStation 4 is definitely something that's hard to turn down, especially when you consider Microsoft's justification for those kinds of things are not very good. I see that, you know, I've been watching the console debate from afar. Didn't really want to get involved in it, but a lot of people have been asking me about it, so I figured, you know what, I'll go over it, just for you guys. And the way I see it, Xbox One still aren't resolving the problems they've had since the beginning of this console's promotion campaign. That's all I have to say on this topic. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like. If you didn't, tell me why, as always, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.